Setting up your meeting for YouTube Live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our ASO Conversation series. I'm your host, Tom Moore, and I'm the Director of Marketing for the Akron Symphony. Our special guest today is Jerry Miskell, who has been a viola player with the orchestra since 1989. Welcome, Jerry.
Thank you, Tom. My pleasure to be here.
So, sorry, everyone. We're a little bit late because we had some technical difficulties. So you were hired in 1989 under
Alan Balter.
Under Alan Balter.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of feedback here. This is what's throwing me off. So that's okay. So does anything memorable stand out from your first season under Alan?
Yeah, that was I was very stressed out about it. I remember that first season, wanting to play perfectly. I didn't really know Alan Balter all that well, but I know he had taken the orchestra from a kind of half community, half professional orchestra to something that was playing at a higher level. And I wasn't sure if I was ready. And so just every concert, every note, I sweated that first season. And it's funny because I was the only one sweating. It seemed everyone else seemed perfectly relaxed, and it wasn't that it was a new experience for me playing with a professional orchestra. I played with the South Carolina Philharmonic and Chamber Orchestra, but I don't know. There was something about coming because I'd left Akron as an undergrad and a grad student, and I never played with the symphony because I didn't have time. I was a double major, and so when I came back from South Carolina working on a doctorate, I felt that I should be playing at a certain level, and that there were expectations on me, and most of that I just heaped on my own shoulders.
So have you been able to see the orchestra evolve over time during your period with the ASO?
Absolutely. I have done 2 stints as personnel manager, so I have seen change in the orchestra, not only in terms of the growth of the artistic product, but also growth from within. All around, it's a stronger orchestra. It's a much stronger orchestra than when I first got there in 1989. I'm always amazed by the incredible skill, particularly of our younger musicians that come in, which are typically grad students, very often from CIM. And we've always gotten those types of players, but it seems that they're doing something right over there, because those players just keep getting better and better. And even the ones who stick around are playing at a very high level. And so for me, it's great. I'm always sitting next to someone who plays extremely well, and I'm always stealing from them. I see, a shift that they do, or wow, that one particular note, that's a special note, and I didn't make it special, so I'm going to do what they did. And so it's like I'm cheating. I'm looking over someone's shoulder while they're taking a test. So it's been great for my playing. And then you feel that responsibility to maintain your level, to keep up with this really incredible orchestra.
So let's talk a little bit about your instrument. How did you first get started playing? Was the viola your sort of your gateway instrument, or did you start with something else and then move on up?
Well, the gateway instrument was violin, but that only lasted a year. When when I was growing up in fourth grade, you could take a string instrument. The thinking being that it takes longer to learn a string instrument than it takes to learn a brass instrument or woodwind instrument or percussion, at least in terms of just getting up and going. Now, to play anything at a high level, it takes a lot of time. Um, and I think also they were worried, well, everyone would take trumpet and flute and no one would play violin and cello. And so I was, for the longest time, I had been itching to play a musical instrument. And so this was finally my chance to play something. And I thought I would play viola or cello. But a good friend of mine was playing violin. And so I thought, okay, I'll play violin. But I was really curious because I didn't know what a viola was. And my first year, nobody played viola. And so I had asked my string teacher about the viola, and she said, "Well, if you really want to know what it is, why don't you play it?" And she said, "Here, let me give you one so you can see what it feels like." And I was in love. I just like, yes, this is a perfect fit. And I thought it was really cool that I played an instrument that not a lot of other people played.
Mm. Well, that's pretty cool. So, what is it that you enjoy about playing in the orchestra?
Uh, a lot of things. The incredible sounds that come out of an orchestra, and it sounds cliche and old-fashioned because there's so much that you can do with electronics that are wonderful, but there is something truly special about a symphony orchestra. And there are just moments where you hear sounds come out that uh, just astound you. And it's coming from our orchestra. You know, this is not Cleveland or Chicago or Philly. This is us, and we're making a sound that good, and a sound good enough that it could fool me. And so there's that. There's the repertoire. You know, if I had it my way, we'd play a Mahler symphony every year because that is my abs. In fact, I don't know if you can see, but back right there is Gustav.
Oh yeah, there he is.
I actually teach a course on Gustav Mahler here at Mount Union. And then there's also just the social aspect and the energy that I get playing with other musicians. You know, I have a long day. I teach full time on the chair of the music department at Mount Union, and you know, at 7:30, you'd think I'd be exhausted, but that's when I'm at my energy is at its highest. There's something about being in a room full of people all doing the same thing that just wakes you up and energizes you. And from 7:30 to 10, I'm not getting tired at all. I'm more awake than I've been all day.
That's really good. And kind of talking a little bit about that, one of the things that really impressed me when I first started with the organization was learning just about the whole rehearsal process leading up to the week of a concert, because everybody in the orchestra, you're all out practicing your individual parts. Then you come together starting on a Wednesday night, and Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night rehearse, Saturday afternoon dress rehearsal, and then it all comes together Saturday night. And it's just amazing how each of you can just bring your A game that night and pull everything together under Christopher and just, like you said, make that really amazing sound.
Yeah, well, there's responsibility on each of the musicians to be prepared for that first rehearsal. And that's not to say that we're all perfectly prepared, but to be ready to work, and then hopefully Christopher's work with us is working on things like balance and phrasing and musical intentions. But there's always going to be difficult passages where we have 14 first violinists, right? And even if they're all playing it well, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily all playing it well together. And so you need that rehearsal time to get it just right. And when you consider that on a violin and really a viola too, that the difference between a note being in tune and out of tune is about a millimeter or two, and you're playing thousands of notes and 14 people in their section, when the whole string section is playing together, then quite a few more. To do that perfectly in sync with one another is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But you have to have musicians that have a high degree of training before they even get there. And then for each concert, you're doing that work to get prepared to make music, to not just get together and play notes, but to make that performance special and unique.
Yeah. So going back to your instrument for a minute, you kind of talked about how your teacher said, well, you want to play the viola? Here, give it a try. Do you think the musician picks their instrument, or do you think the instrument somehow finds the musician?
Well, I guess it's probably different for everyone. In my case, I guess you could say that the instrument picked me because it was this mystery. And I'm drawn to mystery. I really am. I didn't know what it was, and the only way to find out was to play it. It's the same reason I've been obsessed with Mahler's music. The Eighth Symphony is so complex, and it's in two different languages, and it's the symphony of thousands for 1,000 performers and 8 vocal soloists, and the second movement is from Faust, and it has all these characters. I had no idea who Dr. Marianus was, and the Mater Glorioso, but it was still fascinating to me. It was beautiful, even as a mystery. But the more I discovered it, and likewise the viola, the more I've discovered about how to play it, even though it's still they're both still mysterious, and maybe that's what keeps me going. I know both of them, very intimately, but yet they still have surprises for me that I've yet to discover.
It's really cool. So when did it first kind of start to click and get in your mind that, hey, I can make a career out of playing music? Or has it?
Yeah. When I was in junior high, we had a vocational class. And I remember reading the book, and it talked about all these careers, and other students talking about, oh, I want to go into engineering, and I want to go into business. And I guess I hadn't really thought about, well, would I go into music professionally? And I remember the teacher asking everyone, and the teacher said to me, well, of course, Jerry, you're going into music. And I thought, well, there you go. I'm going into music. It's now official.
I don't have a choice.
And by the time I was in high school, I mean, I knew. Yeah, when I was in high school, I knew for sure. I was just knee deep in it. And the nice thing back then is I did a lot. I played viola, and we had a nice music program. We had an orchestra, a string orchestra. I played in a string quartet. I played French horn. I played in band and wind ensemble and a brass quintet. And I sang. I sang in choir and madrigals. I was in our musicians club. We had a town symphony that I played in. I had a friend up the road who played in Livingston Symphony. So I came from New Jersey, and I played in their group. And then there was a townwide orchestra when I was younger. There was a countywide orchestra. I played in North Jersey Region Orchestra, All-State Orchestra. And then I also composed when I was in high school.
Okay.
The choir actually performed a work of mine, and the orchestra read a work of mine. So did the town symphony. And so then what I was wondering was, what was it that I wanted to do in music? I knew I loved singing, but I knew I just, um, we had someone from the Metropolitan Opera come and do a master class with us. And my friend of mine, Ed McNeil, a fabulous tenor, she really worked with him. And then when she worked with me, she said, you should get yourself into a good church choir. And so it's okay. All right. So I guess that's not the one. And I studied horn with Richard Brownlee, who was the fourth horn player in the New Jersey Philharmonic. Great teacher, great player. And he kept talking about someday when you take auditions. And I said, that's not going to happen. I'll be playing this instrument until college, and then I have to focus on what I'm doing. So then I had the viola and I had composition, and I didn't know. I guess my dream job was going to be, I was going to play in the New York Phil because I lived, 15 miles away from New York City, and that I would also be their resident composer. And maybe I get to conduct sometimes too, because I thought I might want to be a conductor. And so I thought about conducting. And I said, okay, let's take Leonard Bernstein, because he was my idol, as far as conductors go. I mean, he just had it all. He had the whole package. He just a brilliant person, articulate, world-class pianist, could have made his living as a concert pianist. And in fact, very often did play piano concertos with the New York Philharmonic. He was a brilliant communicator, very knowledgeable about history. He could score read on the piano, take an orchestral score and just read it down on the piano. And I just thought, I don't think I could do all that. I think I can pull off some of that, but not all of that. Now, I discovered later that there are conductors that really didn't have that bar in mind when they got into music. But fortunately, by and large, I've worked with some really good conductors. But I decided that, okay, that wasn't it. And I thought about, after a couple of weeks of university orchestra and playing pretty much every day, rehearsing every day, I thought, I don't want to hate orchestral music. And if I'm rehearsing every day, I'm going to hate it. And so I decided I would finish my degree in music performance, but I was also at the same time going to do a degree in music composition and theory, because I thought I'd really like to be at a university. I remember the first day I was in the lobby at Gazetta Hall at the University of Akron, where I did my undergrad. I was recruited by the viola teacher there, Jerzy Kazmala was his name. And the viola student was the viola studio was the largest string studio there. He was a monster recruiter, and we had some really, really good players. But I was in the lobby, and if you've ever been in Gazetta Hall, you know that it's opened up to the second floor, and all around you are all the teaching studios. And I heard all these people practicing, and I noticed that the clarinetist was practicing the clarinet solo from the slow movement of the Rachmaninoff Second Symphony. And I thought, this is the kind of place I want to be at, just surrounded by it. But I still loved orchestral music, and I still wanted to play it. And so Akron's perfect for me. It's not a full-time orchestra, but the players in the symphony are mostly full-time players, but at several different places. And many of them are good enough to play right now in any major orchestra. And a number of them have gone on to do that. Wes Collins used to be our principal violist. He is now the principal violist of the Cleveland Orchestra. We have 2 former first violinists in the orchestra, and we have a number of members in the orchestra that sub regularly with Cleveland. I don't even remember what the question was that you asked me, but
Oh, we started talking about how I think the path you took to becoming a professional musician.
Okay. Well, yeah, there you go. That was a long and winding path.
Well, I mean, that's good. You got a nice history going there. So, talking about on the teaching side, you've mentioned a couple times that are you actually teaching in a classroom?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And of course, ordinarily that would always be the case.
Mhm.
What we're doing is a combination of online and in the classroom. But when you're in the classroom, there has the enrollment size has to be small enough to social distance. And in the music building, on top of that, we have added HEPA filters in all our, at least most of our rooms. We're still working on some of them, um, where lessons would be taking place, all the practice rooms. So some of those, we're having all our lessons in bigger rooms. So a lot of times they're using classrooms, the recital hall, our rehearsal room, our black box theater, so that there's plenty of room for social distancing and allowing those aerosols to the bad aerosols to stay away. Um, so I have some classes that are small enough that we can do it live all the time because we're in a large enough space, which is wonderful. Our students want to be there.
Mhm.
They want to be there live. We want to keep them safe, but they want to be there live. And others that are large enough that I'll do something like I'll teach half the class live and the other half is online synchronously. So they're in a virtual classroom, and then we flip the next class, and the students that were live are online, and vice versa. And that seems to be working out pretty well. It's still not ideal. It's not perfect, but the students are getting the information that they need, and I think they're in terms of the learning the content and the spirit of the course, I think they're still getting that. And it's far better than going back to, boom, we're online. And
Exactly.
what everyone faced last year. And fortunately, I've taught online for over a decade, so it wasn't a shock to my system. For some other professors, it probably was, not just here, everywhere. So we made sure that this year we were ready, so that if we've got to shut things down, we at least know what to do. But also that we want to keep everyone safe so that we don't have to do that. And no one feels that way more than our students. They don't want to go back online. They really want to be here.
Mm. What is it that you like the most about teaching?
Well, besides hearing my own voice, it's sharing something that I'm passionate about at least in terms of some courses. For my musicianship course and teaching viola, it's watching the students grow. It's, particularly with musicianship, because it's a very specific curriculum. And I know we're going to go from here to here, whereas private lessons, every student's different. And in terms of how, whether they're a major or a minor, or they're just participating, there's different levels of expectations. So you don't see the same level of growth from all your students. But in musicianship, they don't all start at the same level, but they all seem to move up at about the same rate. And for those who truly need to step their game up more, by the time we're done, they do it. And I used to worry about our students, like, boy, I just don't know if so and so can do it. And I've stopped worrying. In most cases, when they realize that they have to do it, when they realize, they look at their grades and say, hey, this is not going the way I thought it would. And of course, I'm always saying, hey, look, here's, you know, this component of your musicianship. You know what? You can spend a little less time on it because you really need to spend more time over here. And they usually know it, but it helps for them to hear it. And then to watch that transformation from the first semester to the fourth semester, particularly when we're at the end. And then I always have them look back and say, look back to the first semester and some of the things you struggled with. Did you ever think then that you would be doing atonal sight singing? And they all have the same reaction. No, not, not in a million years.
Yeah, that's really good. So you talked a little bit earlier about Mahler as being one of your favorite composers. Do you remember the first time you heard something by Mahler, and what really, besides talking about, you like mystery, what really made it click for you?
Yeah, I remember actually it was my horn teacher in high school um, said to me, "Hey, Mahler's Symphony of a Thousands is going to be on TV. It's going to be Bernstein and the Berlin or Vienna Philharmonic. Can't remember." I had no idea who Mahler was. I didn't know what a Symphony of a Thousands was, but that sounded pretty exciting. And I thought, well, I'll watch this. Well, I forgot. So Sunday came along and I was channel surfing, 3 channels plus PBS back in the day. And on PBS, when they used to play orchestra concerts every week, at least one, sometimes more than one, there was Leonard Bernstein. And so I thought, well, that must be it. And there was this big, huge piece. And I think I got in on the second movement. And it was in German, though they had the subtitles. I had no idea what this was all about. But the sound, it was like something I never heard before. It was something I'd never heard before. And again, it was that mystery. I needed to find out what it was. And so I went to our town library, and sure enough, they had a recording of Bernstein in the London Philharmonic. And on the cover, they had a picture of all the performing forces, which is enormous. I mean, there were literally 1,000 performers at the premiere. And now I had the texts and the translations, and I could read all the background on it. And now it meant something more, but it was still very mysterious. There was a lot, particularly the first movement's a Latin hymn, and so you can make sense out of that. The second movement is Faust, the final scene from Faust, where Faust has been killed by Mephistopheles, but rescued by these angels. And basically, it's just his body rising from earth up into the higher and higher levels of heaven and being redeemed by 4 women, 3 of them famous, one of them his lover that he betrayed in life. And then the Mater Glorioso, the glorious mother, is the one that gives him, that decrees that he has been redeemed and that he will be floating ever higher, going to the higher levels of heaven for all of eternity, following just behind Gretchen, because she's a little more evolved than he is. She's been there longer. She's paid some dues. I didn't really get that when I was first reading all of this. And so eventually I had to learn about Faust and what that was all about. And then who are these characters? Who's Dr. Profundus, and I learned a lot of that not too long before I began teaching my course on Mahler, which is about the 2nd, 8th, and 9th symphonies, which all deal with death, dying, and afterlife, but from 3 different points of view from the same person. And Mahler, I discovered was incredibly well read. Philosophy, religion, even though he wasn't religious, very well read, probably read the Bible more than most Christians. And Eastern philosophy and science, because he, not having a religion, he was looking to figure it out on his own, and in his mind, if there was nothing after death, then life was just a cruel joke. And he makes so many compelling cases in his music about what that could look like. And I always say, like, the 2nd symphony, the Resurrection Symphony, it sounds religious, but it's really not. It is about heaven, and it is about a resurrection, but it's a little bit different than a Christian resurrection. But on the other hand, if you were a Christian, you would find it beautiful. And if you were someone who was spiritual, believed in an afterlife, you would find it beautiful. And if you were an atheist, you'd still find it beautiful, because you'd think, okay, I don't believe any of this, but this is what I would want if I could have it, because Mahler writes about the two things that every human being wants more than anything else, and we never think about it. We almost never talk about it. We don't think about it. But the two things we most want is, number one, to be loved unconditionally, not romantically, but to be completely and totally accepted, and to feel that love of total acceptance. And the other is to be eternal. And I think that's what the way Mahler felt. That is what he wanted, and he wanted to find, he wanted some sort of evidence that that was true. And that's why he was reading so much and thinking about it and then writing about it. If worse comes to worse and there's no heaven, there's heaven on earth. And all you have to do is listen to Mahler's Second Symphony and the Eighth Symphony last movements, and you're there. And if heaven doesn't sound that good, I don't want to go.
I think some of the stuff you touched on, that's what makes music so so special. You can listen to a piece of music and just enjoy it on that level of, this music is really, really good. But then you can explore deeper into it like you did, and you never know what kind of path it's going to lead you down, and just pick up the other, all that extra knowledge and that extra, interest, and just kind of build off that. And I think that's really interesting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's so much more powerful as a musician when you get that. When we played Mahler 2, this has been a little while back now with Benjamin Zander, we played it at E.J. Thomas and then at Severance Hall. He rented out Severance for him. By the way, thank you, Ben. Very, very generous. After the first performance, my stand partner was weeping. And, if you know anything about, classical musicians, is they tend not to get emotional when they're playing because they're so focused on what they're doing. That sometimes you can almost get like a surgeon, like you can't get emotional about a patient that might die on you, right? And it's the same thing, that level of attention, where sometimes we do great performances, and what do people focus on? Oh, I blew that high F, and yeah, but it was a great performance, and Ben came back, what was it, last year, and we did Tchaikovsky 6, and talked about Tchaikovsky's letters and the turmoil that was in his life that was so much greater than I'd realized. I knew he was hurting. I didn't realize the level and all the detail from his life that's in that piece. It meant so much more to me than any time that I've played it or heard it prior to then.
So outside of Mahler, do you have any other favorite composers that really get you going?
I love John Adams.
Mhm.
I love minimalism and his post-minimalistic works as well. A lot of my own compositions. He was a big inspiration for me. But oh my gosh, I love Bach. I love Corelli when it's played by a period instrument performer that knows how to embellish, and because Corelli just gives you a scaffold. And if you just play the notes that he wrote, it's really uninteresting. He didn't mean you to play it that way, but to hear someone take it and turn it into an 18th century piece of music, to me is wonderful. Rachmaninoff, that Second Symphony, which, it's super popular, and the third movement has that very famous tune, but it's so well written. As a composer, the complexity, the orchestration, but yet it's still this beautiful, lush, probably the most lush symphony ever written. Prokofiev, so inventive and quirky. Oh my gosh, it's like, as soon as someone says, like, what's your favorite movie? You go, you're like a deer in the headlights.
Mhm.
I don't like movies, I guess. And there's so many composers that I'm not mentioning right now that I should be. Of course, Beethoven's wonderful. I just listened to all 106 of Haydn's symphonies this summer, and the thing that amazed me is that every single one was brilliant. which is different than Mozart. Mozart wrote 41, and we know of the really, really good ones, but his early ones were childhood works.
Mm.
And they're, they're serviceable. But Haydn's First Symphony, he was, I think, in his late 20s when he first started writing. So he was a mature composer. But to crank out 106 symphonies and not to have a single one of them that, that's crap, that's amazing.
I know that is pretty impressive. So, kind of thinking back on your time with the ASO, are there any performances that really stand out in your mind as being memorable, or like any kind of like moment that was just like, wow? I know you mentioned playing at Severance is probably one of them, but it's anything else really kind of like stick out?
Well, yeah, it tends to be Mahler related. I mean, Mahler 2 for sure. We did Mahler 9 with Ben, then a couple years later at EJ and Severance as well. And the last movement it's the physical act of dying. And when it's over, it's not this big ending like the Second and Eighth Symphony. It's the last breaths with 4 notes in the violas, go violas. But just incredibly quiet. And then, typically the audiences don't applaud for about a whole minute straight because it's just that silence is so powerful. So, I mean, I'll never forget that. Mahler 3, Tchaikovsky 6, that was powerful with Ben. The very first Gospel Meets Symphony, that was with Alan Balter, and I was kind of skeptical about the idea because I thought, well, it's going to be a gospel concert with the symphony backing them up. And what I didn't realize was that, well, actually, no, the gospel chorus was going to do a classical number. We were going to do our own number. Yes, we were going to, be the backup band, but there was also going to be this rhythm section. The thing I didn't realize was how great that choir was going to be. And the soloists, I was blown away. I couldn't believe there was this much talent in Akron. Here, it's like my own backyard. And the sound, just that sound of the choir when it was really revved up, it just makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It's just such an incredible sound.
There's so much energy in the hall for that concert. And I remember I've seen 4 of them now. And my first year with the organization, my wife and I went to the concert. And when it was over, she's like, how have we never heard of this before? How have we never come to this before? We're coming every year. And obviously we want people to come to all of our concerts once we're able to be back performing. But, that is definitely one that you need to put on your calendar and not miss, because it really is truly like nothing you've ever seen or heard before. It's just so much fun. It's, you can see all the hard work that people are putting in, and having it all come up to fruition on that night and have it all work is just really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and really, I mean, I could rattle off 20 other concerts that, really stick in my mind. I mean, I will mention Porgy and Bass
Mhm.
doing a live stage performance of it. I'd never played Porgy and Bess. I've played medleys where you do all the, you play all the tunes. What I didn't realize was how intense the music is between all those famous tunes and how intense the story was. And the some of the daring on Gershwin's part in terms of the writing, much more, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but if Gershwin tunes and musicals, if you were to hear some of the music from Porgy and Bess, I think you'd be surprised that it came out of Gershwin. It's just much more edgy and leaner in places than you would expect.
Okay. So outside of rehearsing, how do you prepare for a performance? Is there any sort of routine you go through? Any kind of, this is my go-to meal, or I have to do this on the day of a concert? Is there any kind of, just basically what else do you do to prepare outside of rehearsing?
Besides rehearsing and practicing, I do like to listen to the music that I'm playing. assuming it's not a brand new work, in which case, that's not possible. And even if it's something I know, just to get re-excited about it. I mean, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony I've played more than any other symphony. And I think most classical musicians would say that. And when I see it programmed, I tend to have a gut reaction of, oh, again. But then I put it on and I listen to it and it's like, oh, but that's right. It's so fantastic. And that fourth movement, I'm just so in love with. It's just such a, and even that famous first movement, there's just so many moments that are so powerful and dynamic. And it's like, I've heard this 100 times and it still affects me.
And I think too, it's probably good to kind of think about, you may have played it hundreds of times. I may have heard it multiple times, but there's someone in the audience that's probably hearing it for the very first time, and being able to hear it and experience it with us is pretty special.
Absolutely. I have the same, I get the same high out of teaching, say our music arts and culture class, which is a general education course. And it's mainly focused on music, but I want the students to understand the concepts of style. And so when we talk about the Baroque era, we cover Baroque music, but also Baroque art and writing of the time, and what's happening politically and how that shapes all those things, and sharing this incredible music, art, and literature with the class. And for almost all of them, this is the first time they're hearing every single thing that I give them in class. It's the same thing on giving a performance, that this is a super powerful piece, and you just feel like this is going to grab everyone. It just has to. How could you hear this and not have it grab you? Which of course we know is not true, because we all have different tastes, but you still feel that way.
That's a good transition to the next question, talking about everybody having different musical taste. So outside of orchestral music, what would we find on your playlist?
I like music that's rhythm and blues inspired, and I like bands that play really well. So I like a lot of the rock from the 1960s, Janis Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, The Doors. Names escaping me right now. But because most of that stuff was blues based, and almost every one of those bands actually has a blues tune that they did. When we talk about the blues in my American music class, I point out I have this little medley of rock tunes that are actually blues tunes. Rolling Stones, early Springsteen, when it was more urban and rhythm and blues based and less songwriter based. Black Crowes, Blues Traveler. I mean, gosh, those guys are virtuosi. Van Halen, just great players. Particularly when Sammy Hagar got on board. Now you had two great guitarists on stage for the price of one band. I got to play with a local indie band called Seafair. Tara Hanish was in our cello section when the band first started, and Andrea Belding, who plays violin, subbed with us quite a bit. Well, they became a part of this band, playing electric cello and electric violin, and there was a guitarist, keyboard player, bass player, and the keyboard player, Shayla Hope, was the lead singer. And Andrea needed to sit out for a little while, and I got to play some concerts with them. And their music is fantastic. Unfortunately, they disbanded, but it's kind of like, if you remember Michael Stanley.
Oh yeah.
I came from New Jersey, but when I got here, I couldn't believe I'd never heard of this guy, and it just never went national. And I did a mini tour with Seafair, and not only was their music wonderful, but in these clubs, I heard all this other great stuff. And most likely it's not going anywhere financially, you know? And, people say that, rock is dead. It's not. It's alive and well in the clubs. It's just not, new rock's just not on the radio.
Mhm.
So that was a real eye opener to me. And I really like their stuff. And it also, uh, got me to branch out and start listening to some more contemporary stuff. Because I was tending to listen to things that were for my age and in the 1990s, because that was my lost decade. My son was born in 92,
Mhm.
and I lost track of everything pop culture. unless you want to include Barney.
Right. Yeah, that's the one thing my wife and I have tried to we have a teenage daughter, and we've tried to, even if I don't know the music or listen to the music, I at least try to keep up with who. So when she taught her or her friends are talking about someone, at least I know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
I might not listen to it, but I know who they're talking about. So I kind of have a little bit of insight into how you're going to answer this next question, because I got a little bit of an anecdote here. About a year and a half ago, I was at the local gym, and I'm walking across the floor, and I look up and I see this guy standing at the cable machine blasting out those biceps. And I look a little bit closer and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know him. It's Jerry. So one of your hobbies is hitting the gym?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's just something I'm driven to do. Um, I think it started when I was in junior high. I didn't hit puberty until the summer of my sophomore year in high school. So I always looked like a little kid. And my classmates, our town was probably 95% Italian, mostly Sicilians. So, by the time they were 13, they were men. And I just felt so young. I felt like a boy, and I wanted to feel like I was a grown up. And when I, got to high school, they had a weight training class, and so I started doing that, and I liked the way it made me feel.
Mhm.
And and I was still not playing varsity sports, but we had a huge neighborhood, and we did a lot of pickup basketball, football, baseball games. And it it made me feel more athletic when I was doing those things. And I've just, it's just something that I continue to do to this day. And I want to be healthy. I want to feel good, and it at least, knock wood, it seems to do that for me. So I'm going to do it as long as I can.
Mhm. How have you been holding up with the fitness regime during the whole COVID situation?
Well, so the gym that we go to has several locations, and there's one in Mentor where I live. And when they shut down, actually before they shut down, because I knew it was coming, I started looking online for something, and I got a Bowflex, and the one I got allows me to do every exercise that I would ordinarily do at the gym, and then some. And it's been great because when I'm at the gym, sometimes you go through the motions. I had to learn how to use this thing. And so I'm reading the manual and saying, okay, this is what you should concentrate on when you're doing this exercise or this exercise. And it was interesting. Every exercise it said, tighten your stomach to support your back.
Mhm.
And that's something that I never thought about before. And I thought, well, maybe that has something to do with some of the back problems I've had over the years. So I've been getting a great workout from the machine, and I'm still, even though the gym's back open, I'm not going because you know I just don't want to take the chance. But I'm still paying my monthly dues because it's a local business, and I want to keep them in business.
Yeah, we were the same, kind of in the same situation. We just said, we got to stop going for a while, just because, you just don't know, how safe it is. And then we started going online like you did, trying to buy equipment. And it has been so frustrating trying to find things because everything gets out of stock. And then you get these little small victories. Over the weekend, we actually found some plates. One of the sites we go to, they actually had some plates on that were available, and we ordered them, and you think it was like the greatest, you think Christmas had come in our house. My wife and I were both so excited. It's like, yeah, we got more stuff for the home gym. So, piece by piece, we've been putting it together, but we joke that, we're going to come out of the other end of this and we're going to be the most healthiest nation in the world because apparently everyone is buying fitness equipment because you can't find it anywhere.
Right. Yeah, I think I got in just early enough that I was able to get one, but as I recall, there weren't a whole lot. It was X number left.
Exactly. And if you see it, you got to jump on it. So I think we're kind of coming up to the end here. Are there any other activities that you've been using or kind of just to help stay centered during these last few months where we haven't been able to, perform live and just everything that's been going on?
Well, I've been reading more. I've watched more streaming stuff than usual, though I've found a lot of great things. I mean, we're in a golden age of TV right now. There's so much great stuff. I got a subscription to the Metropolitan Opera streaming service, and what's really cool about it is one of our alums at Mount Union sings with the Metropolitan Opera. Now he typically doesn't get leading roles, but he's been back to the university a couple times to do master classes, and great guy, Eduardo Valdez. And so I asked him, I said, which productions have you been in? And so to see him on stage in Turandot, with a Franco Zeffirelli set in this incredible opera, and there he is. I know that guy. And I asked him, I said, because that performance, it was dedicated to Zeffirelli, who had passed away. And I said, did you ever get to meet him? And he said, yeah. And he told Eduardo, he said, you play Pong. There's Ping Pang and Pong, the three eunuchs. He said, you play him as I always imagined him. So what a great compliment from, one of the all-time great set designers and film directors.
So, all right. I think, I think we've said it all, my friend. I don't know if there's anything left to say here. So thank you.
No one wants to listen to a 5-hour video of me, my jibba jabba.
You never know. I was going to say you can play us out, but I don't know if we got ready to do that. So thank you for your time. Thank you to everyone for watching. We appreciate comments, shares, likes to help us grow our network. This is the ASO Conversation series. Our special guest today was Jerry Miskell, a viola player with the orchestra. Thank you, Jerry, for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, everyone, for watching.
And we will be back soon. Everybody, stay safe.